I feel like as a guy, if you want a date to be good, you can just make it good.
Yeah, okay. I feel like you can do that as a girl too. You don't think so?
It's kind of the guy's job to like put the date together and what you're doing and like all the stuff. Do you know what I mean? And so like, if you just like want it to be a good date, you're just gonna make it good. I don't know. I've never had like a bad date.
Yeah.
I've gone to ones and I'm like, oh, you are way heavier than you were in your pictures. But I still was like, I'm gonna make this fun. You know what I mean? Like let's get to it.
I have had the best, worst Hinge dates.
Oh, really?
The best, worst.
Why?
Like I met up with a guy in downtown St. Louis that, I mean, I hate to like assume his sexuality, but it wasn't women.
Why are you saying that?
We gabbed like two besties.
No.
He didn't make a single move. We gave each other the biggest hug and we're like, have the best rest of your evening. Like, didn't go anywhere else. Like, we literally just gabbed the whole night. And then,
What is he doing?
Trying to make friends. It was hysterical.
Like, could you tell by when you first just saw him?
Yeah.
You're like, oh.
Whenever we first started talking.
Yeah.
Like, it was like a little metrosexual energy and like, oh my God, you look so cute kind of thing.
He said you look so cute.
Oh, yeah. And I was like, this is going to be so fun. And it's all for the plot, too. Like, that's kind of my, going into dating apps. Yeah. That's how I've always been. So, like, the weirder, the better. You know?
No, I don't know what that means.
I loved going on Hinge dates that I could just, like, text my girlfriends afterwards and be like, we got to get a fucking drink after this one. Can't wait to tell you about it. Oh, yeah.
You've had some bad ones?
Yeah. I mean,
But see, that's what I mean. Is like, I think that dates are only bad if a guy is weird. Because girls are just, like, kind of normal. You just, like, you give them the energy they want. You ask them a bunch of questions and you're friendly. And girls are like, oh, this is so nice.
Yeah.
Most guys, at least this is what I hear back, is like, they just, like, don't say anything or they're kind of, like, awkward and timid.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and those definitely are the worst dates.
Yeah. So you're just kind of stuck there at a table for 2 hours.
Yes.
Twiddling your thumbs.
Yes. Yeah. I think there was one that I showed up that the guy must have been, like, standing on things whenever he was taking pictures of people.
He's a solid 5'7" when you met him.
Oh, no.
Oh, not even...
Maybe 5'4". Like,
no.
Maybe. Like, wow. I don't think I was wearing heels, but, like, I mean, I was the man at the table. I'm opening his doors.
Oh, my God.
And he was definitely, he probably thought the same thing about me. Like, he was like, damn, she's way taller in person in those pictures.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That was an interesting
Any real
one,
awkward ones, though?
No. Not like,
crazy.
Like, that one was pretty awkward because I think he probably was like, yeah. This girl's like 5 inches too tall for me.
I did it recently. I went on a date. I mean, not recently, but, you know, in the last while. Girls will always, if whatever your height is, not always, but most of the time, they'll be like, are you really that tall? Like, they'll just say it in the DMs. I'm like, do you want me to take a picture next to a tape measure? Like, what am I supposed to do here?
When you've been lied to as much as we have been, it's just, we might as well get it out of the way.
Yeah, but I am taller. Like,
well, then you're not lying.
Yeah, but then it's like, I feel like I'm fighting this uphill battle to, like, what do you want me to do? I don't know, take a picture, like, at a gas station next to the little thing so you can see?
Yeah, but I mean, like, yeah, so we got to make it difficult.
Oh, that's what is that she was like, well, I'm going to wear my heels. And I was like, okay. But she really was actually like 5'10" and was wearing heels. So I was like.
Pleased to meet you, ma'am.
Kind of got me. You got me.
How tall are you?
5'11".
Okay. Do you say 5'11" on your
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
I think it's I feel like the height thing is a weird one too. It's so obvious if you're not being honest about it.
Oh yeah.
That it's like, I think it's the other, it's like you could lie about how much you weigh and kind of get away with that. Pretty easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like take some pictures of like being jacked, but just like wear a good shirt.
Yeah.
And you can kind of lie about that. But height, there's really no way around that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious whenever you show up. So they're like, I just got to get in the door. Like, give me 1 foot in, and then they think they can make up for it.
I asked that one girl. She said that anytime guys, like if their height on their thing says like 6'2" or something, they're probably 6'2" because it's like ginormous.
Okay.
But she's like, or if a guy, it's like 5'7", he's like, yeah, he's probably short.
Yeah.
But like everybody who's 5'11", almost 6, you're lying. That's what she told me. She's like, that's the lying height.
Yeah, because they're like 5'9", but they're like, let me just fudge it a little.
A little bit,
yes. I do think there's some wiggle room, maybe, like 6 foot to like 6'4" is like the same to me. But if you're 6'4", you're like, God.
Yeah,
my neck kind of hurts like looking up at you, you know? We had a guy on our basketball team in college that was like 6'10" or whatever, you know? Jesus. And that was just like... You know how you don't want to be awkward and be like, oh my God, how tall are you? But nobody couldn't do that, you know?
You kind of had to.
You had to.
Well, I think I have always, it's kind of funny. So my like best friend, he's like 6'4", 250. And so if I were to lie about what my height was and I'm standing next to him, it wouldn't, like, do you know what I mean?
There's no line.
I had no wiggle room there. And so then also what sucked is I feel like I'm not short at all, but I was always like the short guy because it was
out of your friend group?
Yeah, do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So I'm like...
Even my fiance, so we were like friends all through college. Yeah, he's 6 foot. I mean, like, so, but he was on the football team, so everybody that he was friends with was like 6'2" and above, like 6'2", 6'4", whatever. And whenever we started dating, like I hadn't seen him in a while, like since college, like maybe a year or whatever. And I was like, God damn, did you get bigger? And he's like, no, I've always been this tall. Yeah. You just always saw me around people that were 6'4", so you thought I looked so much littler.
Yeah.
That is real.
That is a very real thing. I need short friends.
It's the same thing as, I think this is in like a book that I read maybe in like 5th grade, which was way too young to be like knowing that this was a thing. But like in this book, there was this concept of like girls in a girl group, and like if they're like all of their friends are a little bit less attractive, the girl who...
Oh, the hot friend. Yeah.
and she's like a 20 out of 10.
Yeah, of course.
You know? Yeah. Like it's the same kind of concept.
Yeah, that's the concept of the Office 10.
Yeah.
It's like at work, she's a 10, but that's because she's next to Meredith, who's 45 and has a bunch of kids. You know what I mean?
I've never heard that before.
The Office 10, which she's really probably like a 5.
Yeah.
But at work,
yeah,
everybody tried to get it.
That's hilarious, and that's so real. Yeah.
Very real.
Yeah.
Huh. I also think so, but I remember thinking about is okay. This is the part that I think is super unfair for men and women. I really think that this is the only part that I'll give in and be like, yeah, that kind of sucks.
Okay.
Like as a female, there is just so much of like the attraction that you're going to get is just based off of your physical looks. Mm-hmm. And there's like kind of not a way around that. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. As a guy, you can really be fucking ugly, unattractive, and like be either really funny or like successful. Yeah. And you're just fine. It's like you get a pass. You totally get away with that. As where if you are a ugly, super successful woman, you're kind of still fucked a little bit.
Right.
That is unfair and kind of shitty.
I completely agree.
Yeah, that's the one where I'm like, yeah, it's pretty rough.
Yeah, that sucks.
The only kind of around about it, I guess you get, is that just to think about it is like, it's probably a little easier to make yourself attractive than it is to become hyper successful. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like, I do.
So if you think about the balance in that way, it's like how many people are actually super successful? That percentage is very, very low.
Right.
So as where like it doesn't take that. I think that a lot of times we say like somebody's pretty or whatever, and I think about this all the time. Is like I think about going around somewhere in the middle of the United States, and then going around when I went to Italy just this last time. It's like, oh, they're not prettier, they're just not fat.
Right.
That is 90% of it.
Yeah, no, that's very real.
Is like a lot of the girls that I see is like, you would be really pretty. You just got 50 pounds you need to cut. That's so mean to say. But it really is kind of true.
Like if you look at like Australians and they're just all hot, but it's because they're all in good shape and tan.
Yeah, get a little sunshine, out running around, eating scorpions, whatever the fuck they do.
So what Australians do.
They're doing something different.
I also think a piece of this is that, women are just a little bit more like deep than men.
Okay.
Like they can go past some of the looks, you know, and see like characteristics that somebody has like outside of, just their looks. And unfortunately, a lot of men aren't that way.
No.
I
don't think it's that men aren't as deep. I think it's that the bias towards sexual attractiveness is so much deeper ingrained biologically.
Like society has taught us that like women's
no,
value.
I mean like, you know what? I would be interested to see what this test result would be.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say you have a female and she looks at, like, passes through 10 different men and how they look, right? What would be the, like, spike in arousal, right? Like, you can tell those things by, like, pupil dilation and, like, like heart rate and I'm sure a myriad of other different things.
Right.
I would imagine that whatever that baseline is for, like, a female sees a very attractive male, unattractive guy, whatever, it is not as high as a male who sees attractive female, whatever. Like the biological reaction to seeing an attractive female, there's just like a bigger, physiological reaction in men.
Right.
So that you can't get past.
Well, and there's like for certain characteristics of women, it's biologically that they're attracted to longer hair because it means fertility. It's seen as like you're more fertile if you have longer hair. There's things like that as well that are seen as more beautiful biologically. So I see where you're coming from with that.
I think it's like because some of, again, totally outside of my scope of anything I fucking know anything about, but I'm just trying to like.
No, but we can pretend like we're experts
we know
on it.
anything. But also something of shit that I've like read or whatever.
Yeah.
Is that a lot of time for mating between a male and a female is that the female is trying to seek out the person who's going to give their offspring the best chance at survival.
Right.
Right? As where the male is just seeking out to procreate.
Right.
So at that sense, it's like, for the male, he's just kind of looking for like which female is going to have the best genes that I can pass these along in. The female is looking for which male is going to like protect and make sure that they grow up and are safe and they go along to have offspring. So then she has to kind of look for somebody who's like, maybe they're like stronger or smarter or they've got, do you know what I mean? Some other attributes that kind of matter.
I feel like I can maybe go back to how advanced men and women are in that scenario, Because like obviously there is more advancement, so I'm like generalizing, but the men who are like.
Make that face good. Give me. Can I get a close up on her face when she?
Like I'm just imagining.
I don't know what this
is. A fucking caveman who's like, me produce,
Yeah.
And the woman is like a little bit more advanced, where she's like, okay, well, he is funny, maybe he's not in the best shape, and he's not going to be able to like protect us from like. I don't know, fucking bear attacks. Okay. But like he's like a good match for me because he's like nice and funny.
Okay, so I'll challenge you on that.
Do it.
I'll challenge you. I think it's the same. So like what we're saying is like, guy sees female, right? immediate chemical response that like I'm sexually aroused, I'm attracted.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
For the female, I think it's actually the same. It's just different chemicals. So she gets around a guy and he's like protective and kind and can like do things. That's just an increase in oxytocin rather than dopamine.
Right.
Right? So it's just like that oxytocin is like I feel protected and taken care of in that love hormone, right? So it's the same like biological response just through a different method.
Okay.
And so it's, I think it all is kind of the same.
Yeah.
But it's just like, for men and women, it's just going to be a little bit different. But also, because I'm trying to think about because the reason I say it is it seems to be almost universal through every society.
Yeah.
That when you see that where it's like, in Japan, they do the same thing that they do in Mexico, that they do in South Africa. It's like, okay, well, then that really is probably not a cultural thing. It probably is a biological thing.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
That it's like, this guy has the most property and land. Let's mate with him. Do you know what I mean? That just makes it like...
Safety, protection.
Yeah, makes more sense.
Yeah. Okay. I feel you. I think you can't change my mind.
I just think you guys are fucking idiots is what I'm saying.
I just think we have maybe gotten a little further away from our like instincts than our male counterparts.
Well, I don't think it's not farther away from it. It's you know what I think about all the time? Okay, here's a good one. Okay, here's a good one. People are terrified of speaking to large crowds of people.
Yeah.
Terrified. It's like the number one thing, worse than death, right? Well, the reason for that is like there's no biological reason why you're fearing like you're going to die by talking to a big group of people.
Right.
But if you just draw that all the way back, again, human 30,000 years ago, it's like the reason why we have like social faux pas, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, you don't do that in front of the group.
Yeah.
Is because if you got kicked out of the group, that meant for sure death. Right?
Yep.
You can't get kicked out of the group because we like literally only work. We're not snakes. We don't work by ourselves. We work in teams, right? So all it is like, here's this new age that you wouldn't have ever got in front of 1,000 people 30,000 years ago. There were only like 60 people hanging out in a couple huts.
Right.
Right? It just didn't happen. So now that like fear, that same biological fear instinct that's from thousands and thousands of years ago, you just have to place it in modern day age. So it's not that you're really afraid of this thing. It's just like the new thing that the old computing system has to work with.
Right.
Right. So now.
Interesting.
Now the thing like, women wanted to be with like the biggest warrior or like the warlord who fucking was the king, do you know what I mean? That's who you wanted to mate with.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Well, now it's like, okay, well, we don't have like kings like that anymore. So it's like the dude who drives a Ferrari. You're not really interested in a guy who has a Ferrari, but he's amassed wealth in a way.
Right.
That like, it just supersedes back to that same thing that biologically made sense 30,000 years ago.
Right.
So it's the same, you guys are just as dumb as us. Nailed it. I fucking nailed it.
Okay. Let me take it back for a second here back. Too, because I also am viewing this.
Yeah,
we all know that.
We all know that. Duh.
Okay, but I think there are less women who would be able to look past, like certain characteristics because this person was like super successful, right?
Okay.
Then there are men that would be able to look past looks because this woman has, a million other endearing qualities.
Got it. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think you're right.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. The spread is uneven.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah. And not saying though that there aren't women that are like, fuck yeah, you have a Ferrari, like
let's do it.
Let's go. Because there are, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but I do think it's like I don't think it's as much like, oh, you have a Ferrari, you're in.
Right.
It's more like, you probably have some other okay qualities, but then you also got some real bad ones. I'll just not look at those bad ones because you also do own a Ferrari and own a home. Do you know what I mean?
Have you seen the videos? that it's like, you're like sugar daddy, you find out that he's got like 10 others, and you're like, I'm blind. She's got like all her Chanel purses and shit. Like, I mean, yeah.
Okay,
you
yeah.
know?
I can't see anything. Yes, very true. I think this becomes like a topic for a lot of people to talk about because it's so like prevalent on social media. Do you know what I mean? Like, social media has gotten to this thing where I heard this said in something I was reading the other day, is like, it's just trying to attack your emotional center every day.
Yeah.
So rather than like, even 50 years ago, like the nightly news was like, we were trying to like teach you something, even if it wasn't perfect. It was like, we're trying to like teach about why the war was happening or something. But social media is just like, hey, I've got your attention for 3 seconds. What's going to make like the lizard part of your brain go, ah!
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like
Yes.
as much as possible.
Yes.
And so I think there is a lot of hyperbole, and even we're doing it right now, talking about like men kind of being like this and women kind of being like this.
Yeah.
But then like, I went on a date last night, and it was so normal. Had like great. It was like, yeah, I've dated guys, and this was kind of like not right, but I've spent some time and worked on myself, and I'm like, yeah, I kind of went through this thing, and like, it really in real life, when you really sit down and like talk to somebody, I don't think it's ever really like the shit that we see on social media.
I
and
agree.
Stuff.
I agree.
Like, there are for sure those people. There are the like Kardashians of the world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do think that they're like pretty far in between. Most people are like conscious and want to talk and have yeah, maybe that's right. Maybe, I don't know. And like could kind of be persuaded either way. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. I have met so many influencers in Phoenix, and obviously like, whenever people meet me that have, you have this expectation of somebody because of their personality online, and because, just like you said, social media is so clickbaity.
Yeah.
And then you meet that person in person, and you're like, oh, you're a really cool
You're a normal
person.
human.
Yeah, you like know about world events and can have like a normal conversation. And I do think that is something that you just see online, like the highlight reels, and you see online the clickbaity videos. And so you do expect people to be different in person, or the same.
So
as
then
social
you
media.
as a social media influencer, it's like that's your thing.
Yeah.
How do you combat that? I feel like there is something to be said about like fighting the good fight. Do you know what I mean? Like, we've talked about this before. Like, you could just post a bunch more videos of you a little bit more naked and get more followers.
Yeah.
How do you make yourself more genuine and more real in your posts? Because sometimes you can't. Sometimes you actually do have to put out content that's like, hey, come look at me.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
But then how do you balance it when you only have 30 to 45 seconds to talk to somebody to show like who you really are?
Honestly, I'm still learning also. Like, this is probably the last 2 years have been whenever I've really been figuring that out the most, because my growth came from short videos of workouts, and a lot of that was people just being like, this is easy to replicate. This is easy to do in my home. This is,
Could steal your workout.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
But now I'm getting away from that, and I'm doing more like, get to know me and who I am outside of just exercise. And whenever I first started doing that, I really struggled, because there are things that I, world events that happen that I feel strongly about that I want to, be in support of or not support of. And doing that, vocalizing those things that make you who you are, does cause you to lose followers. That's, across the board, because there's going to be people that
Does that keep you
disagree.
from posting that stuff?
Sometimes.
It does to me too.
Yes.
And I wish I wasn't that way.
Yeah.
I wish I had the courage of my convictions to say the thing I wanted to say, but and you know what? I probably, as I'm like saying it right now, I'm like, oh, you should just do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's a thing in your head that's like, oh, don't do it.
Well, it's so hard, and you see like celebrities all the time. You know, they were the first one, like influencers.
Yeah.
So anybody that spoke up about anything political, it was a huge deal because of the influence that they had on people.
Yeah.
I just saw a video this morning that was like talking about how Taylor Swift is going to have all of her Swifties come out for like election day, and whoever was like the broadcasters, like, we got to figure out how to combat this. And I'm like, you guys are crazy.
What
like,
the fuck are you talking about?
But I mean, realistically, she does have a lot of influence.
Yeah, she gonna stomp.
She's right.
Girl gonna stomp.
So I understand that my voice does have an influence, even if it's on a very small scale in comparison to those very large, you know, celebrities and whatever. But I've done it a couple times, and it is amazing to see the people who get to know you a little bit better. I've had clients sign up with me because of posts that I've made that are about, you know, my morals or my values, or just like things that I'm in support of or not in support of. And then I've also seen like 10,000 people unfollow me because of it. So you have to understand that you are
But then
making a sacrifice.
but then you think about that quick math in your head, and it's like, well, those 10,000 people that unfollowed you, like, they weren't going to be your biggest supporters anyway.
Exactly.
And the like 1,000 that did are going to be like the rock star fans.
Exactly.
And so it's like, yeah, but you still don't want to like lose that number,
Right.
You know, and Anyway,
Right.
I'm sorry.
No, that's exactly what I was going to say. It's been worth it in my experience, but I also pick and choose which battles that I do speak out about, because one, I don't want my page to be like just political
Shit.
you know,
No.
right?
Because also that's not who you are really.
Yes.
Like, we've had 100 conversations. They're not all about politics.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
You
And
care about it, but it's not your whole life.
yes, and I'm very like I lean one way, but like I'm very good at like holding conversations, middle ground stuff. So it's not anything either where I feel like so strongly that I'm like willing to risk my career on it or something like that, you know? Not that that's like as serious it is, but
You know what I find that mine is okay, so I will see something and it's like a political thing or just like a social issue or whatever, right? And you have to make the content in this short little soundbite to get across the message that you want to your audience.
right.
But there is no thought process that I have that could ever, if I'm going to talk about an issue seriously, that could ever get talked about in 90 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, it's not actually possible.
Yep.
Like, I commented on this other person's thing, right? I've been thinking about this like the last 2 weeks because it literally has like blown up. There's this guy, he's a huge gay right advocacy guy. His name's Matt XV or VX. I mean, they have
Okay.
anyhow, he actually is like a smart motherfucker.
Yeah.
But he made this one thing that I just like, I had to bite on. It was like, okay. And I feel really strongly about this.
Okay.
So right now, obviously in the news is like the Israeli-Hamas situation.
Yes.
That. And again, if you were to just take my 5-second take, it's like, don't go over there, don't go fuck with anything.
Yeah.
No, but that doesn't really relate the entire message. It's like, that's not actually how I feel. It's like, that may be the end consequence. But, so, let me then summarize bigger view in what I saw in him. Are you ready for this?
I am.
Are you fucking
I'm buckled
ready for
in.
this? Okay, so he's talking about how like we need to go over there and support the Palestinians, and because of like what's happening to them, the murder and all that stuff.
Yes.
And you know, his point that he was like making was that like if you're not in support of that, you're a piece of shit. Like these people are dying, and like you need to go do this because it's like the right thing to do. And I see things like that. And so this is where I think there is a lot of change of perspective just from like certain world experiences that I've had. So going to college in China changed a lot of the way that I view the world in the sense of like, what are the things that matter? We have a perspective that basically like shit in Europe and like in the Middle East matters a lot. Like those places matter to us. As where like if you were to just take the whole globe, it's like, well, the number one place where there is still literal genocide, like they are getting rid of ethnicities. They are raping and torturing on a daily basis, and a whole country is enslaved, is North Korea. And it's been going on for 50 years. But why don't you care about that?
Right.
There's a lot, whatever you're worried about that's going on in Israel right now, it's 10,000 times worse today in North Korea and has been that way for decades. So don't tell me this story that you just care about all human life.
Right.
Because that's not true. Because if it were true, your focus would be there.
Why don't we get involved in anything like that?
We have nothing to gain by being there.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Which is what it always comes down to.
Yeah. And I'm not saying this, I don't think that this guy is sitting there literally thinking and calculating like, oh, well, if we win in Israel, we're going to have more oil or something.
Right.
It's just literally a reflection of like the news and what comes in. And right now there is this thing that like if you are in support and you want to like help the Palestinians, it's like now like everybody look at me, give me the fucking pat on my back. I'm a good guy.
Right.
And the first thing to me is like, well, first of all, you're not fucking doing anything. That's not what's going on.
Right.
If you cared this much about it, you would just go there.
Right.
And go, the Red Cross is there. They're handing out water. Go.
Right.
But you don't really want to do anything. What you want to do is you want to tell people that you care.
Right.
And that really bothers me a lot.
Yeah.
Because there are things that like I have genuinely cared about. And like, yeah, I went and fucking did something about it. Like I went and did some work with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It's like you see certain areas where it's like, okay, that kind of matters to me. I would dip my toe in that.
Right. Versus people who are just commenting on things because, again, it's clickbait. It's today's world event that is everybody is talking about. And so then they're all of a sudden passionate about it. But the next day, they're probably not talking about it.
It's the next thing. So that's step number one.
Right.
Right? It's like, I don't actually believe most of these people bullshit. The people that are like cheering in the streets right now that we need to go save the Palestinians. It's like, where are you at about the people in Sierra Leone? Oh, that's right, because there's nothing there for us to really gather. But these kids are being stolen and fucking raped every day.
Right.
Okay, anyway. Second would be, we have been going to war and keeping peace or sending military aid and doing this shit in the Middle East for 80 years now. There's still terrible stuff happening right now. But every time that we went there to do it, we were like, we got to go save them. That clearly just look at the past of what's happened. We're not going to go there this time and save everybody and it's all going to be okay.
Right.
It's not going to happen. It didn't happen 3 years ago. It didn't happen when we did it in Syria. It didn't happen fucking 10 years ago with the Iraq war. It didn't, like, it's not happening.
I've always wondered how the rest of the world views America getting involved and being like, I feel like we're very, look at us, we're coming in and saving the entire world. And it's not always actually beneficial, like for us to involve ourselves.
Yeah.
So I've always wondered how the rest of the world views that, us getting involved.
You know what's weird is like, it is a little different depending. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
right.
What was really crazy, do you remember Anthony Bourdain?
Yeah.
I remember I used to be very, very liberal when I was young. And I remember he's passed away now, very liberal guy.
Yeah.
And he went and did a food tour in Iraq after we had left the occupation there. And they were so, and not just one, I mean thousands of people were so happy that the U.S. had come there and done that. When you see that, that part is hard to then be like, because these people were literally under a dictatorship and they were getting fucking slaughtered.
Yeah.
And now there's this, and Anthony Bourdain, he's like, I didn't agree with the Iraq war, but he's like, being here now, this is tough. It's like you see this Ferris wheel up and kids playing and like, 5 years ago, they were hiding in bunkers.
Yeah.
It's like, it's hard to see that and go like, oh, we did the wrong thing.
Right. Yeah.
But that being said,
when would that have been that he went over there?
Hold on, let me think. That tour that he did through the Middle East thing would probably have been 2000 2015.
Okay. So I was going to say
16.
he died.
Only 3 or 4 years ago.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say 5. Okay.
It really is interesting to watch. Like him like talking to these Iraqi people.
Yeah. He was awesome.
So anyhow, then, you can look. I'm sure the same thing is that there's like people in another war-torn part of the world. They're like, well, why don't you come here and save us?
Yes. Yep.
Well, because it's the Middle East and it doesn't really mean as much to us, So anyway, there's that other whole thing. So it's like, the reason I don't make that kind of content is because I feel like the context of the conversation is so long.
Yes.
That it's very hard to just like put that information.
Yes. That is how I feel in what's going on in Palestine. And my sister actually, her ex-husband is Palestinian and his family's Palestinian, obviously. But they were very involved in the Palestinian community in Chicago. Their wedding was traditional Palestinian, like the most beautiful, unbelievable wedding weekend. Just everything. My sister was like, everything that you guys do traditionally, I want to do.
Do it.
Yeah, start to finish. And to think that entire community, I'm sure that they still have family. I don't think that her ex-husband does anymore, but I'm sure that, people there still have family out there. Yeah. And, I'm very tied to that side. But then I also know, and can see, people who, the Jewish community and the other side of it. And so I have not even dabbled in talking about it because it's so much. Yeah. It's so much to unpack. And I understand both sides looking at what's going on. But
then I do think it is kind of a disservice to, if you really think about it. Remember when we were talking last time about saying things, even if they're bad, is good to say them so that way it's out there?
You said that.
I said that.
Yes.
You don't believe that.
I don't agree.
You don't agree. But I think this kind of goes in line with it, is that like that thing that you just said, right? Is like, yeah, there are probably other people who like, they don't really have an opinion about it. But if they watched your content and they saw, and they're like, well, what do I think? Like it just gets them thinking, and then they're going to go do research about it.
Yes.
Because like, someone that they know and can relate to just brought it up, how it is like a nuanced conversation.
Right.
And it's not so much like this is right, this is wrong. Then like, oh, okay, well now I'm going to go do my homework and go learn a little bit more about it.
Right. No, I think it's hard. I think it's hard to decide where.
I don't agree with that.
I don't. I feel like we've learned from our past, and then like that happens, and then we were like, oh, this. I literally just had this conversation the other day. Okay. Because we're going to bring it back up.
Bring it back up. I could tell as soon as you said that, you're like, oh, I want to get back at him about this.
Because this is my thing.
Okay.
So what you feel like should happen, where everybody just says their opinions and like is outward about it, and then they get shunned from, the whatever community they're in because their opinion is ludicrous.
Okay.
That has happened so many times, and then they get shunned, and then people stop talking about it, and then somebody else with some crazy idea is very outward about it, and then people band together with them, and then they get shunned again. You know what I mean? Like I feel like it happens.
Yeah, but I think that right now what you're doing is kind of putting it on the like. You have to first take the base premise of like, people are going to think crazy shit.
Yes.
Like you are not going to get away from that.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Like even there's just no way to not think that there's not going to be people with crazy radical fucking ideas.
Right.
It's just how it goes.
Right.
But it seems clear to me.
It always does.
When you tell people like, no, you can't talk about that, that makes them want it more. Like that is to me where you get these underground secret group chats of, that's where you get, I don't know, fucking mass shooters from. Like they just bottle all this shit in, do you know what I mean? And they're weird, crazy people. And then that's what they do with it.
I'm gonna give you the other side of the coin. Okay. Because I remember when I was, this is ingrained in my memory. Like I remember where we were, everything. I was like 6, and like I said that a lady was fat, like as a 6-year-old does. I'm like, Mom, isn't she like, she's fat, right?
She's real fat.
And my mom looked at me and was like, you can't say that because it's inconsiderate. And I was like, but it's true. And she was like, regardless, it's inconsiderate. And so growing up, that was like the kind of value that she instilled in me was like, if it is inconsiderate, don't say it. And then it made me start thinking like, oh, that is, inconsiderate, and started making me kind of see that that's not like pertinent conversation to have. Like, I don't need to be just talking about people's weight. I don't need to just be pointing out, people's flaws or whatever, because that's not, an important part of the conversation anyways, and it's not nice, so it's not going to be helpful for any reason. So for me, her telling me that, it made me a better person.
Okay.
Obviously, I was 6 also, so that's different than like a 30-year-old being told to like not be racist. But I think it gets you, if they say it outward and you're like, hey, don't say that shit, then it's like, oh, well, why? And then you can have that conversation.
Yeah, but I think I think actually what you said would kind of make my point.
Because
is like the 30-year-old guy being like, blacks are evil. You got to hear him say that to tell him, dude, don't say that.
Right.
You can't think like that.
Right.
If he doesn't say it out loud because it's like banned or something, then that just stews in his head and he actually keeps thinking it.
Yeah.
Not until he says it out loud can you have a conversation like, hey, dude, you don't really think that, do you?
Okay, I think I understand your point a little bit better now.
Like,
because I kind of had this picture where you were like, like not doing anything about it. Just keep chatting about it.
Well, no, but the point that is like, I think a lot of times we think, like we take capitalism, right? And it's like what capitalism really does is it just makes like the best win, right? It's a hard, difficult process, but that's all that it really is.
Yeah.
Well, the same thing happens with conversation and dialogue and philosophy and everything is like the best conversation wins. And so if you're telling these other people that they can't be in the conversation, they're not getting shut down. Like they have to be shut down in a part of the larger scope of the conversation. This is like that big thing, like I am a Elon Musk fan, but I was very excited as when he bought Twitter because they found, there really was like our government was telling them to like shadow and censor a lot of these conversations that people have who, to be very frank, they're like things that like I don't even agree with, right? But when you do that, like that makes that side like feel stronger. And like that if they're part of just the public open conversation, they can get beat down by what is a better argument. And that really, like, and you watch, and I think where a lot of this comes from is I remember sort of in the scientific community, if you really go to where in the sciences and academia and conversations, like they are violently arguing with each other. Because the whole concept is like, here's this data, well, that's wrong because you fucking did this wrong, and no, this is right. And like, they are just constantly beating the shit out of each other. But from that, you get the best ideas.
Right.
And so you kind of have to have the same thing. Like, there are some times where I do think it's like, yeah, the shit that people will say that is like racist or sexist or kind of crazy is like, you know what I think is a good example? This is so terrible.
I love when it starts like that.
Okay, there really is this thing about, it's always been a thing, like the Jews in the media, right? Which is just like anti-Semitic and like pretty fucking crazy. But then that thing that happened to Dave Chappelle like years ago, when it all came out and they like showed the messages and stuff, they really did,
What happened with Dave Chappelle?
So he did 2 seasons of the Dave Chappelle show.
Yeah.
And essentially, long way around, he like wasn't really going to get paid for it when it was like the highest grossing thing that they had ever made. And so he was like, well, you're either going to pay me or I'm not going to do a third season.
Yeah.
So this guy, who was like the head of Comedy Central or whatever at the time, and then also another guy who was a head partner at Warner Brothers or something, they ostensibly made up these things in the news. Like Dave Chappelle had like gone do you remember that at the time? Like Dave Chappelle's like crazy. He's running around naked in the streets doing crack and stuff. It was like a thing.
No.
Because Dave Chappelle, he was the most watched show on TV, and then he just disappeared. And he just like went away.
And they just made up.
Completely made it up.
Wow.
They told him, you'll be outcasted by society by the time you get home. And they were right. Because it's what now, here's where it's like, this is that vague, like bad spot, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, the head of the place was a Jewish guy. And he has another buddy who does media outlet stuff for different news organizations. Another Jewish guy that they go to the same synagogue at. But again, so taking a step back, because I don't want to sound like I'm fucking anti-Jewish here, is that like, this is no different than like, yeah, I also hang out with other white dudes because we get along and we have similar interests.
Sure.
Yeah, this guy has friends that go to the same synagogue as him and they're all Jewish. They're part of the Jewish community, but they're also all in media.
Yeah.
So that like, hey, the Jews run the media thing is like, well, I mean, it is technically kind of true. The head of all of these organizations are all Jewish, and they all do know each other, and they all work together.
Right.
I don't think that they're like this Jewish mob that's like trying to have the Jews take over the world.
Right.
That's not what it is.
Right.
But there is some truth to that. There is like a group of people who, if they decide you're in, then you're in. If they decide you're out, then you're out. And when he said that, he was outcasted as like, you know, this evil Jewish hating guy or whatever.
So did he come out after all that happened and he was like, the Jews run the media? He like made a statement like that.
He was a little more like, okay, so the analogy here is like what he did was like said what kind of happened and that there were these like groups of people that did this to him.
Yeah.
And everybody was like, you're a racist, you're a piece of shit, or whatever.
Okay.
Well, the same thing actually happened to Kanye West, except for Kanye West actually said some crazy racist shit.
Oh.
Right.
Not Kanye.
Not Kanye. But again, taking a step back, because everything just has layers of context, it's like actually the same thing kind of happened to both of them.
Yeah.
Like Kanye West was at the top of his game, was making billions, and like he basically said this stuff, and then the head of these organizations were like, either take it back or we're gonna like cut you off from everything. And so the record companies or whatever it is, like got Adidas to cancel this thing because it's also owned by this Jewish partner and this other thing. And so it's like, there is, okay, so take all of that, right?
Yeah.
There's some place in there to have fair criticism that like this group of established people at the top of media outlets are choosing what you can and can't say. And like, I don't think that's a good idea.
Well, I see where you're coming from, obviously. Like, it, you know, people who run the media and can spin stories like that and can kind of do whatever the fuck they want, like, that isn't good. You know, that's a recipe for disaster. But to, like, go back to the Dave Chappelle story, you know, him having all of that, you know, all of those like rumors spread just to kind of cancel him, that fucking sucks. But you could just be like, these guys are, you know, spreading these stories, running the media.
Also, that's like not how when we say, you know, like there's a term called a WASP, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. Okay. Right? Basically, like, what are all congressmen? Old white dudes.
Yeah.
Like, we don't actually have a problem saying these old white Christians guys run Congress. You say it, everyone else says it. Yeah. We don't have a problem saying that.
I guess that is true. And
so then if you switch Christian for Jewish, all of a sudden it's like, you can't say that. Yeah. It's like, well, yeah, you can. You did right there. And that, again, is like an open, fair criticism. It's like, you got to be able to, if you're going to say it, you got to be able to take the heat for it too.
Well, okay. I want to also say that whenever people are talking about old white Christian men in Congress, it is because all of that is like pertinent information. Like they're making laws on Christian beliefs.
Totally.
They're old as dirt.
Totally.
And they're not in today's
and they're
world.
Men and they're
a lot of them are making kind of more like, you know, some could see, and this is what I kind of believe, like sexist laws that, you know, aren't taking the female perspective into consideration. So I feel like whenever that is described, it's a little bit more of like that all pertains to the conversation versus.
But these guys are saying like, hey, you can't say this stuff because we're a Jewish community and it goes against what we believe. So then it is pertinent to say that they're all Jewish.
Well, but wouldn't you think that if like you were a white guy owning a media company and people that were very like affluent were making anti-Semitic, you know, statements, you'd probably also be like, hey, fucking shut it down or else you're going to get canceled. Same with any other like racist.
Well, but what I'm is like, the point that I think that they were making about it, right, is like if Kanye West was saying these things, but he used the word Christian rather than Jewish, he wouldn't have been canceled. It's because he said these old white Jewish men, that's cancelable, as where these old white Christian men is not cancelable. I
disagree.
but you can't, that is what happened.
But think about like Fox News, if he's like anti-Christian, you know, they're probably going to be like, fuck Kanye. Do you think?
Yeah, but they don't control the media in the way that they can shut down his business.
Well, yeah.
Because that's what they did to him.
Yeah.
So, again, my point here is not like, oh, that you should be doing that, you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
It's like, if things are really fair, that you should have open criticism in all directions.
Yeah. And
you should be able to say those things. Otherwise, like, here is the big thing that I see all the time now, right? Okay. You hear, like, these white dudes that are my age being like, being a white man in America is the, you know, it's like, I don't even remember what they say, but it's something like, we get more shit now than anybody. And you hear someone say that and you're like, God, that's so dumb. But also, it is currently in the moment kind of true. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think about this all the time because she's so bad. Who's the girl who's the Miss Marvel or whatever? Or no, she was Captain Marvel.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
I can't remember. Yeah. I just hate her because I love that character and she made it so bad.
You don't like the movies?
Oh, they're so terrible.
Okay.
They're so terrible.
What else is she in? I like her.
She's gorgeous. I don't. I'm just talking about the Marvel movie. Anyway, point being, she like got up on stage at one of the Academy Award things and was like, "We have got to kick out all of these old white men because we don't fucking care what they have to say. We need, you know, like." She's
talking about Congress?
No, she was talking about movie critics.
Oh, okay.
And like, as where reverse, if you were like, oh, these black women, we get to kick the fuck out of here. Like, you just couldn't say that.
Yeah.
So take these like white guys who are like, oh, it's hard being a white dude. Yes, now is like, it's dumb to say because it isn't actually hard.
Right.
But you are actually now the only group that you can like tear down and say negative things about. And everybody goes, that's right. That's right. And so then what happens is you get this group of people who like, yeah, they're going to be resentful. They just are. Like, there's no way around it. They're going to be like pissed off that like, well, why can't I say the same thing that you're fucking saying? And that's where I think is like, again, going back to the whole conversation we're trying to have here, is like, if you don't allow people to have the same freedom of speech amongst everything, now look at what's happening. You're kind of getting these like angry white guys who are like banding together, and do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the real truth is like they kind of have a little bit of a point. Like, again, I don't agree with them, but I can see where they're coming from.
Right.
And so then it's like, as where if you just took a step back and said like, hey, yeah, let's give it a free speech thing. You can say, whatever you want, and we're not going to demonize just you for saying this. Then they wouldn't have a sword to carry.
Right. I think that it is a smidge different, personally, because, and you can kind of see, like, the freedom of speech is somewhat there, where you are allowed to say, just like we talked about and whatever, we always come fucking back to this, but, you are allowed to say things, that are negative around, like, a certain group of people, but you, as like a society, we kind of choose what is right and what is wrong. And I think as a society, what we have decided is that people talking about the old white men, people that are, old white men, like my dad, for example, like he's not pissed about people talking about old white men, because he's like, yeah, a lot of old white men do suck, because they do, they're a little racist and they're a little sexist. And as a, like stereotype, they're trying to weed out the ones that are like that have kind of these older views. And same like in, movies. I know that they've talked about like women winning more awards, or, minorities winning more awards, whatever. I do feel like as a society, we've deemed that as a little bit more acceptable, because there are still those people that are, you got just an Aethor hair in your eye.
I kind of could sense something, but I was waiting.
I couldn't believe you just kept
keep
looking
going.
at me. But I do feel like it's been deemed a little bit more acceptable, because it is targeting the group of people that it's not the, everybody, but the ones that have caused issues in our country.
Yeah, I think that really I totally agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think
are you offended by people who, like, if I was like, I hate old white men, would you be like, ugh?
I'm not offended by anything. Like, but that's not really my cause of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's like my thing that I'm trying to say is like what is good or bad for society, right? And this is like one very strong held belief. If you go around talking about like, oh, these old white men, whatever, that is always being as lazy as possible. So here's what I mean by that. I run a company, right? Somebody comes to me and they say, hey, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem. Okay, great, appreciate that. Go back to work.
Yeah.
The person that comes to me and says like, hey, here's a solution, here's a solution, here's a solution.
Right.
We're going to get along.
Right.
The difference is like people want change, they want to see something different, but they don't want to do the hard fucking work that it takes to make it better.
Sure.
So what you really mean is you don't want to say, oh, these grumpy old white men that fucking run everything, fuck these guys. What you really want to say is, hey, here's this economic development plan that we have for inner cities that's going to take 20 years to do, and it's going to be a lot of hard work, and I'm going to help come up with the plan for it. There we go. But that is like, again, that's like the problem with every situation is, like the thing that I was saying at the beginning about like being the pro-Palestinian thing or whatever, is like, I think most of the time people are just saying this shit. It's like for clout, because it's like, oh yeah, we're fighting the old grumpy white guys. And my personal belief is like, I don't fucking care. But I also don't care if you're like, oh, these fucking black people that are doing this or that. Because I'm like, oh, well, I think that those are both equally dumb.
Yeah.
I really do believe that. Because there's nothing coming from it.
Well, I think we can go back to the beginning of our conversation, though, because how much time do you have on stage to get a very deep conversation and get your point across? So if the end of her point was we need to get these old white men out of, the whatever critic chairs, then that's all she kind of had time for. You know?
But then it's just as easy to say like, hey, how can we empower more young black women to be in this group?
You're right.
I know I'm right. I know I'm fucking right. What it is it's a better soundbite.
Yeah.
Okay, this is like getting back to the very beginning. Remember you were talking about this last time? It's like the Hitler thing. Yeah, it's just easier to say like, let's kill the Jews. It's easier to say, let's kick out the old white guys. It's easier to do those things because that rallies, having someone to fight against is easier to rally people together, but it actually doesn't do anything. The best thing to do is to say, here's the productive things we're going to do to make the world better.
Right.
But what that takes is it takes real vulnerability, because when you put out a plan, people can pick it apart and can tell you like what's wrong and what needs to be changed, data, whatever. And that takes some fucking, that's what leaders do.
Right.
Right? That is the fucking difference. This is why it's like the world has nothing to do with black, white, men, women, poor, rich, whatever. It's like, are you a leader or are you not? That's what it really is. That's the thing that actually fucking matters.
I like that.
We're an hour? God damn it.
We actually have been killing these.
We
also.
crush these things.
We've been killing these.
Okay, so what was you have something?
I think that you, like, yes, a plan is always going to be the better option, because it's actually going to, you're actually taking action, you're actually making changes, but you also do have to rally the troops to make those changes. So in my opinion, people coming out and being like, not even just old white men, but like old people in general, like like fucking, sorry, but like Nancy Pelosi, you're so old.
Yeah.
You know, like you're just like barely standing up there, and like, why don't you want to retire? And that's opened my eyes to be like, you know what, we probably do need younger people in like the offices of our like government in general, because they're so out of touch with what is reality. And so that's my point, is that I do get where you're coming from. Plans do need to be actually created, and then actions need to be taken. But there also is, you know, something to say for the leaders who are just like, who are rallying the troops.
But then you don't, I think, actually believe it's like being old is the problem.
It's a part of the problem.
Maybe it is. Again, the thing we talked about this on here is like, if you want really good politicians, you can't run for re-election if you run a bigger than 3% deficit.
Yeah.
Right? Because then what it doesn't matter, again, young, old, black, white, male, female, are you doing the right thing? Okay, now we've got to a baseline premise.
Right.
That is what really matters.
Right.
And that is like, yeah, I'll go back to 1,000 times. It's like, are you going to be a leader, which is like doing the hard work, doing the hard lifting, putting yourself out there. I mean, like, I think about my work and being here. It's like, how many people have looked like an absolute idiot too? Because I'm like, let's do this. And we do it. And it's like, that went terrible.
Been there.
That didn't work at all. But it's like, if you don't have the chutzpah to put it out there, you're never going to build anything great.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, yeah. Okay. So that's my point there.
No, well, I like that. I can't remember exactly how you put it, but I liked the ending of it all, you know? Like,
we got the
I
juice
get
there.
where you're coming from.
All right.
Yeah.
You done for today?
Killed it.
Killed it.
Woo!
Fantastic.